to communicate these days. We also resolved to increase the ANC's engagement with superstructure of the generation and dissemination of information, including the media and academia. Simply put, we're saying that we're not communicating enough to communities. We should be able to do better than what we are doing right now, and the platforms are there available for the African National Congress to communicate. We just have to make sure that we use those platforms effectively. We further resolved to finalize our own internal communication policy, including the social media policy, to inform and guide communication protocols of the ANC. What do we mean here? Right now, we know that as we were sitting in the conference, there were some comrades who were already tweeting and already comrades communicating information outside, not only to the media. It's not about the media. They were communicating also with their own comrades where they come from. The challenge with that kind of communication is that you are at conference. You are expected to abide by the protocol. You communicate only what is convenient for you, and the person who's outside does not have the full picture of what's going on in the conference. And then we're saying that the communications policy, which we've already developed, must then be implemented. On information and communication technologies, we resolved to accelerate the radical transformation of the ICTs to leverage its strategic contribution to the economic growth and development. The radio frequency spectrum, and I think that lots of people are very interested in this one of the spectrum, is a scarce national resource which must be used to advance the development of the country. In this regard, the national frequency policy should be finalized because it was long started already. It should be finalized without delay and should seek to achieve the national policy objectives, namely, and this is very important, to remove entry barriers and enable participation of SMMEs through the value chain, including manufacturing, facilitate economic empowerment, enhance local and global competitiveness of the sector. Importantly, the allocation of the radio frequency spectrum should support the introduction of wholesale open infrastructure networks in order to avoid unnecessary duplication of the infrastructure. Here, when the discussions was ongoing, was about the 3 spheres of government, and almost every sphere of government wanting to be the one that rolls out something that should be properly coordinated, because we don't want the duplication. Duplication wastes a lot of resources. On broadcasting infrastructure and services, acknowledge that the SABC is the single biggest organization in the country with expansive to all sectors of our society. In this regard, we resolve to attend to the corporate governance challenges which are facing the SABC. Government should also accelerate the finalization of the outstanding policies around the funding of ICASA, the SABC and MDDA to ensure that they meet their respective mandates. Government will also introduce interventions to promote the local content industry, which also has implications for our cultural expression as a nation. Many of the members of the Commission really bemoaned the fact that national content and South African content is almost playing second fiddle in places where it should be on the forefront, and therefore they were asking government to make sure that there's an intervention, particularly because SABC is a public broadcaster. It gets some of its resources from government, but also it gets its resources from those that are paying their TV, and I'm sure those that are paying their TV would like to see more South African content. On print media transformation and diversity, although the print media has generally been on the decline, the NGC noted that it is still a significant player in the generation and dissemination of content, and as a result remains critical in shaping the battle of ideas. Accordingly, the ANC resolved to accelerate the implementation of conference resolution regarding media transformation, accountability, and diversity. This includes a parliamentary inquiry on the feasibility and desirability of the Media Appeals Tribunal in line with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa. I'm sure many of you are interested in that. That's it. Thank you very much, Comrade Zizi, because the government and legislative communications are already dealt with it in the beginning. That is our report. I'm not sure, comrades, do you want to add anything?
They will take questions.
We will take questions. Okay.
Can we take questions? Professor Susan Boysen? No questions. Genevieve from Karim Duplessis? Zabantu Stephen Grotes.
He was PAC, not ANC. Stephen Grotes, Eyewitness News. Good afternoon, Minister. The idea of investigating the feasibility of a media appeals tribunal, I mean, the first came in Polokwane in 2007, that's almost 10 years ago. Is it actually going to happen this time around? I mean, politely, I think what I'm trying to say is, are you just saying it, or are you actually going to do it this time around? Excuse the bluntness. And then the intervention around the corporate governance of the SABC. We haven't had a cloud in the sky for a while because of the heat wave. But what exactly do you mean when you say you want that to be resolved? Do you mean specifically you want Claudia Motsoeneng gone? Thank you.
Those are my last two questions. Thanks very much, members of the panel.
Okay, let me start with the media tribunal. Well, I think the first thing that the African National Congress will want to make as a statement is that in that discussion it was very clear that nobody is of the opinion that we must not respect the constitution of the country in as far as media freedom is concerned. However, with the experience particularly of the last 5 years or so, the feeling is that strongly the ANC as a liberation movement and as a ruling party is being relegated to either the back pages, or if anything, a lot of what is reported is something that is only on the side of the negative. We're saying we want to deal with the negative narrative, and we think that part of how we can do it is to make sure that we finalize this issue of media tribunal. But also we want certainty on the matter. Like you rightfully say, it's been going on for 10 years. You never know whether it's coming or going. The Commission was very clear about it. They want it done, but they also want it done through the proper processes, through the constitutional processes. That's why it was strongly said that the parliamentary process must now kick in and be very vigorous so that there can be stability in this area, so that people don't keep on asking us about something which we've been talking about for the past 10 years and never getting into it. And note also that when we say the parliamentary process, it's open. When it goes to parliamentary processes, understand that the public will also have the right to make inputs into it, and therefore that process will be open for further discussion. Anyone for SABC?
Yeah. Now, maybe just to add on the first element, the real issue, the core issue there is about accountability. And the strong feeling from the delegates is that this issue of self-regulation is not working well in our constitution.
Core regulation.
Yeah. On the issues of SAB corporate governance, there are quite a number of issues. They are not pertaining to, it talks about the stability of the board. It talks about the nature of its management and the outlook of its management. And what was key there is that those who are deployed in government must really make sure that they take the responsibility of leading this transformation and stabilization of this key national asset of the national broadcaster. I think that's what was the main issue, that we should really seriously attend to all these corporate governance issues and make sure that there's stability in the governance, there's a stability in the management, and make sure that then the SAB must focus on its core business.
SABC.
SABC.
You can add your say.
To focus on its core business and mandate so they can deliver to the South African. Thank you.
Perhaps, Stephen, you will know that in Polokwane we said that there must be a media tribunal. Let's first start so that we don't incorrectly portray the resolutions of the ANC. And in Mangaung we said, after having engaged, by the way, and after even the media itself saw the weaknesses in its self-regulation, and after it came with the PFC, the Press Freedom Commission, and came with some recommendation and some punitive measures which were never implemented, indeed the ANC has given the media to look at itself and to introspect, including on matters of transformation. I wonder how many people who are employed in the media are in unions or allowed in the first place to be in unions. Secondly, I wonder whether indeed there is a charter as we speak in the media. And from where, and again, you'll also know that there are 4 players that continue to occupy this space with impunity. Even through the value chain, whether be it on printing, whether be it on distribution. Now, indeed, the ANC has said, media, look at yourself. Can you do something about this matter? From where we are seated, we don't think that the media has indeed, print in particular, has indeed respected the space that they've been given by the governing party to look at it self-critically. And that's why delegates are saying, apart from all these issues, the media is also playing an oppositionist role to the African National Congress and to its government. Now, can it really self-regulate? Or, as the Press Freedom Commission said, is there anything that represents co-regulation in the media sphere? Indeed, you remember that in Mangaung we said our parliament should, on the basis of the report by the Press Freedom Commission, then establish. Again, we were so impressed with the report, established an inquiry whether there is still a desirability for a media tribunal. In fact, in the commission, members of the ANC said there is desirability, by the way. They said, that, in fact, there is a need for a media tribunal. In fact, they said to us, why did we retreat? But we retreated because, indeed, in our view, you did something that you did not finish. Let's have Parliament doing this inquiry. Let's all make our presentation, and the ANC is ready to make its presentation to the media, to the Fifth Parliament. SABC, we are all jealous of the SABC. There are other views that say that it might have been captured by capital. Is it true? We don't know. Why are all these negative aspects of board and management always repeating themselves within this very important public broadcaster? But there are others who are saying, you have got so many wonderful people and expertise, but do you have that expertise at the highest management level? Have you employed and properly employed people that can take charge of this 6 billion industry? And these are the questions that we're asking, and we have been giving a clear mandate by delegates. They said, we must speak with government and stabilize the SABC. It's a clear mandate. We cannot, as the ANC, be sitting on the sidelines and seeing all sorts of problems in the SABC playing themselves out. Whether be it at the level of management or at the level of the board, you know, there are some board members who were dismissed. We don't know whether the actual legal framework was used to dismiss those, but indeed the ANC cannot remain aloof to the destruction of this public broadcaster. All that our members are saying and all that plenary has said, let there be accountability on what is happening in the SABC and let's stabilize the SABC.
Thanks very much, Jackson. Let me take you, my last, because the 2 other commissions are waiting outside. Vugani Mde.
Thank you very much.
I'm noting you because you're speaking for the first time since the start of the NGC. That's the only reason I'm noting.
No, I'm not actually.
Oh, you spoke outside.
Don't give him the opportunity.
Thank you. Because I'm speaking for the first time since the start of the NGC, I hope you will indulge me. I have a couple of questions. The first question is, you spoke earlier about the importance of local content. The SABC has recently signed an agreement, a very controversial agreement with the Multi-Choice Corporation. in which SABC content, particularly local content, is actually now being shown on an exclusive closed pay TV channel. Now, a lot of people have said that that deal constitutes an effective merger, and that because it is a merger, it's a notifiable merger, and that it should have been taken to the Competition Commission, and that's what they are attempting to do. I would just like to know if the ANC discussed this and what the ANC's view on the SABC multi-choice deal is. Linked to that deal is the fact that the Minister of Communications has recently is pushing through a broadcast digital migration policy that does not include conditional access. If I am not wrong, I think I'm not, that goes against standing ANC policy as well as a cabinet directive, policy directive on conditional access dating back to October 2013. I'd like to know if that was discussed as well, and what the ANC's view is on broadcast digital migration policy and on conditional access, and on what the policy that the Communications Minister is pushing through. I'd also like to know whether or not the ANC discussed the long-held plan that the ANC has been the plans that the ANC has discussed over government ad spend, and whether or not government ad spend can be used to encourage the entry of new entrants into the media, particularly smaller commercial and community-based media. Thank you.
Thanks, Mdani. Well, that was my last question.
Can I start with the last one and ask the comrades to... Yes, the discussions about government ad spend was deliberated upon quite a while, and also because government itself and the ANC has seen the role of small and medium enterprises, and government is looking at what are the opportunities for SMMEs and where exactly are they. And you know exactly that government has already adopted the 30% procurement, and that procurement is awaiting Treasury's finalization in terms of the in terms of ensuring that everything is smooth around it. The issue here about government spend, clearly comrades were of the opinion that nobody else will create the opportunities either than government itself in as far as supporting small and medium enterprises, including your local newspapers and so forth. And so comrades were calling for, let us make sure that government spends on procuring from small and medium enterprises. We're not saying we're going to go out and give people money. There must be a service that government is getting from small and medium enterprises. And the comrades really went into market about, in the media space, what are the areas that they think that there's a possibility for small and medium enterprises. So that was a discussion. And also the discussion around it centered around economic transformation. What are the opportunities there for small and medium enterprises as also a vehicle for this economic transformation? As Comrade Jackson was saying, that this ownership still sits in the hands of a few white people and white males in particular. And this government spend is seen as a vehicle that should be used to empower small and medium enterprises.
Thank you. I think the issues you raised about the specific issues on the SAB and the multi-shares, those were issues of government.
SABC.
Now they can add the C, government.
It's very strange for somebody that doesn't drink beer to keep on saying SAB.
Yeah, the SABC and the multi-choice.
Yes.
It was raised in the contents of this good governance and transparency, because SABC is a public broadcaster. It uses public asset, that we must ensure that as we gauge in this, particularly on the content, that the content has got a huge price. It cannot be sold at a very cheap to those who can afford to buy at the market price. Those are the issues which were raised, but not in a manner to micromanage the organization. But the issues about transparency of the decision, I think that's what was at the core of what the delegates were looking for. Just to clarify briefly, then Jackson will complete that on the DTT. the real issue from the government side and the ANC was not about conditional access, was to ensure that we don't produce dummy boxes as we move to DTT. We must produce the boxes which can assist us to do other functions to empower our citizens to access the ICTs. We must produce boxes where we can be able to switch them off if they are stolen outside and taken outside the Republic where they are supposed to be, or if they are stolen. We should produce boxes where we can add features, where we can also in the future maybe provide things like access to internet to the families and poor families. So we didn't want just the dummy boxes which should convert the signal, because you see the ICTs as an important component of social and economic development of all the people, particularly the poor and the rural masses. I thought I should just add those.
We are to engage with government, but maybe we should start by saying all of us were very embarrassed that we could not meet the deadline of migrating from analog to digital in June. Now, as South Africa, we are a serious player in the continent and in the global village. The mere fact that we failed to migrate is a matter that the ANC is taking seriously. And again, we'll be meeting with government. That's the first issue. We wanted to just to step back. The second issue is what is on the table now in relation to how we move forward. And whether what is on the table now, will it create a post-DTT regime where free-to-air stations and pay stations are on equal footing? Or there are some bigger players with better quality and others with less quality? These are the, again, we'll also look back whether the intentions we had when we started the discourse around this area to create industrialists, to kickstart an ICT industry in the country and ensure that there are entrants in that industry, particularly black entrants. Do we achieve that through what we have on the table now? Now, that is an argument that we're going to have, and not an argument, it's a discourse that we're going to have with our government. We've been instructed as the ANC not again to stand on the sidelines and think that things will happen because we, of course, we trust our government, no bones about that. But we must come closer, and there must also be accountability on the part of our government on these matters to the African National Congress. Not only on SABC, but also on the matters of DTT. Whether, as Comrade Sia has said, as we move forward on DTT, is this in the public interest? The same would apply. As we intervene in the SABC, whether on whatever agreements it has, is that in the public interest? So that, again, we should not allow any of us, whether in government or in government-owned structures, to be construed as having been captured by capital. That's why we are so serious in attending to these matters. We have that mandate from this NGC.
Thank you very much, Babum Velas.
Just clarification on that. I don't want to misquote anyone. And can I just ask, does that mean then that you believe the decision to go with unencrypted boxes is wrong, and you want to go with encrypted boxes? Is that what you say
We
when
are
it comes
saying
to DTT?
we are going to be engaging with government. We have not had an engagement on this matter. And we might not even be familiar where government is. Everybody knows that, by the way, there was no consultation between whoever is in authority in government around this area and the relevant committee of the African National Congress. Therefore, we would like to be brought on board so that we also go back and see whether what we have on the table now does it take us forward in the manner we anticipated when we discussed migration some years ago? And again, within the framework that Sia is speaking to, again, within the framework that I've just referred to.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mvelase. That brings an end to the Commission's report. The next Commission is ready. I'm giving you 5 minutes of filing. Okay.
We are saying we will have an engagement with the minister so that she clarifies certain matters which indeed the ANC have not been privy to on this matter.
So she hasn't briefed you.
We will engage with the minister on DTT, we'll engage with the minister on SABC. Thank you very much.
If I can have your attention for the next session, we have requested the plenary because there are setups that needs to be done for live crossing when the president addresses. Some of you requested about 20-30 minutes for that to set up cameras. So we requested the plenary to break for about 40 minutes to allow that. So the last commission, we are likely to have it after the address of the president, economic transformation. What is coming now is LNG. But in the plenary, when the commission comes of economic transformation, we may have to go back for the president address, probably talk to them, the economic transformation after that.
After the president's address?
Yes. We are planning now. At the moment, we're waiting for LNG. Our work continues. Not all of us will must go and set up cameras. It's those guys behind them. No, not now. We'll let you know as soon as that is. Do you need to set up cameras?
Yeah, I just want to get some pictures of the whole place and
No. I'm worried about people who must set up. When they don't need pictures, you need to set up.
Yeah,
pictures
I need to set up. I need to set up as well, obviously. Yeah. Up there. That's a plenary, yeah. But I don't want to go up there and then security turn me away.
Okay. That's it. Welcome. Oh, we're getting here. Go back. Why am I seeing you only today? No, I must see the papers and see what did you write.
Yes, Judge.
Next, Power FM, you have not been here. What have you been reporting? Hello? Yes. Ubani? Bani? Bani, who's on this bar?
What time is energy right now?
Okay. All right. Sure. We're hoping in about the next 20 minutes we should have some direction from the plenary.
We'll make an announcement. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing well.
Yeah, good.
Good to see you.
Are you tired?
Yeah, extremely.
But we're operating, right?
Yeah. You guys giving me energy.
Our energy is running out slowly.
Yeah, I
eh?
know.
Slowly. What's the next one now?
It's local government,
Local government.
legislature, and government. I think of local government.
Okay.
Legislature
And governance. Okay. And how long do we have?
the on the way.
We're on the way.
So we can cross line.
I can cross live. Yes. That's what I like to do.
going to process the media.
We must have social media policy. Social media. Well, now we are using daily dispatch. Daily dispatch. Yeah, one day is going to be the judge.
You guys get touched by
The plenary is about to break. Economic transformation is now reporting. The plenary will break for about 45 minutes. Ongani Majola, I want you to be a dog keeper, be a bouncer. I don't want people to... Let's wait for SABC to cross live first. Otherwise, we won't start.
Yeah.
Do we have ENC? ENC is not here. Clearly, they are not interested on issues of legislature and governance.
It's boring stuff.
It's boring stuff for them.
Yeah.
When you lose a word, it's headlines, but they are not here. City Press. Comrade Pravin, we have Professor Susan Boyce. She's been with us since Thursday.
Wow. I'm looking forward to her analysis.
Yes. I want all the community media to be here first because these are the real issues that affect communities. Tembisa FM, Alex FM, Power. No. Kaya. Crossing Live. Oh, okay. SABC. SABC balancing, rolling. Welcome to Comrade Pravin, who's a member of the Legislature and Governance, and Comrade Noma India. This is media that has been here since Thursday. They are waiting for your report from the plenary. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, Chairperson. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you for waiting for us. We just reported in the plenary a report of the Legislature and Governance that was accepted by the House. You would know that the report, first and foremost, we were talking about reviewing the policies that were agreed at the last conference in Mangaung and conferences before that, and those areas where implementation didn't happen fully were discussed. The question that was been of more focus of provinces, will come to that. The recommendation around the legislatures, obviously we're talking about this committee was mandated to come up with a document that strengthened the parliament and the provincial legislatures in an attempt to strengthen the governance. And the discussion was around, at some stage, 2 separate documents were being prepared by Parliament and the legislature, 9 legislatures, and the decision at the commission was that, in fact, out of the input from the legislature section, that the document needs to be one comprehensive document, and that document must be finalized in 12 months time. So that is the recommendation number 1 on legislatures. On provinces, the commission agreed that there's lots of research that have happened, there's lots of work that has happened. What is outstanding is a appointment of the Presidential Commission that must engage the society at large, and the recommendation was this Presidential Commission should be fast-tracked so that it can start doing its work and report back at the policy conference. We'll have policies before the actual conference. There were other recommendations around local government, the ward committees. There's a group of recommendations on ward committees, troika, councillor performance, oversight, local government finances, all the issues that are dealing with the performance of local government. And most of these issues, you'll remember, are catered for in the best back to basic strategy that we implemented, but we were reaffirming that back to basic and what needs to be done at a local level. Around councillor support, issues of councillor remuneration, tools of trade that in each and every conference come up. We said these councillors also, these areas would be reviewed. They were not policy issues, but at the conference we said we will review to improve the local government system. So that was raised, but we said that needs to be done as a matter of urgency, including reviewing the local government model of allocating seats. And here the discussion was around the local government is evolving all the time. And surely when we discuss the question of provinces and the local government, we need to look at finally what kind of local government system do we want in the country. But at the moment, we are guided by what is happening, having more metros in the country and saying the standalone municipality. But I think at the bottom of all that is we want to have a situation where local government, that municipalities that are only plenaries are done away with. We want also to have a situation where we don't have local municipalities that are not financially viable. So this review of the local government model is something that needs to happen. The question of intergovernmental relation is a question that is very important to function properly, because at a local government, it's where you implement, whether you are national, province, and local government. So we're saying we need to strengthen intergovernmental relations, even if it means amending the legislation to make sure that integrated planning for optimal delivery of services at local government happens. This is what needs to be done. And we're saying all planning, all spheres, all three spheres, the planning needs to be linked to, needs to happen at a local government.
Cheers.
And unfortunately, I don't have a class. Can I have a class? And then this, when we talk about integrated development plan, it's not only the local government that needs to do that. National, province, when we're planning, they also need to look at what is this integrated development plan of local government. Then they integrate their plan into that. The question of public administration, you'll remember we had a concrete resolution about single public service, and at the commission we said yes, the first stage of single public service, which is a PEM bill, has been implemented. It was clear when this particular resolution was being implemented that there are areas that are difficult to implement because of the powers and functions and the constitutionality of all the three spheres of government. And therefore, it's going to take a long time, but the first part that really gives us an opportunity to share, the skills in all spheres, the skills of the bureaucracy was implemented. And then on traditional leaders, the bill was, there's a bill that was introduced in Parliament, the bill that provides for recognition of Khoi and San communities, and the committee is going to be briefed. The first briefing of the committee would be on the 27th of October. So that is one area. There were other areas that were raised on traditional leaders that we still need to process, and surely if there's any policy decision that needs to happen, it will only happen at the policy conference. The question of municipal boundary demarcation. Now, here we spoke about the local government system, as I was saying, that is evolving, and the demarcation, there are two aspects to the demarcation. One, what was raised is the frequency of the demarcation that is really destabilizing municipalities. And this is an area that needs to be taken at an appropriate level, where we need to start saying how frequent must the demarcation happen of boundaries, both inner and outer boundaries. And the other aspect is relating to the ANC. We have processes where for demarcation to happen, there are certain committees where different parties are involved. So all parties know much before time when something is going to happen. So we're urging them to participate. ANC branches need to participate in that process so that they would know what would happen even before the time. Now, the recommendations around the immediate action by the ANC, which were not necessary policy resolutions. Since we're going to local government, we're talking of 60 retention of councillors, which we've done before the national and provincial elections. But we are qualifying this by saying definitely this should be linked to performance. You can't just retain people who are not performing. If they are performing, then they'll be retained. Those who are not performing will be removed. The nomination from the leagues as part of the ANC, that was agreed to. There must be minimum requirements which needs to be formulated if you elect councillors that need to perform. There needs to be minimum requirements of what they need to have to do that. We spoke about public participation and community report backs, which are not policy issues. We're emphasizing things that we emphasize every day, door-to-door campaign and all that. ANC branches having their own program. And I think what is significant here that we've decided, which is something that we don't normally do, that we must consider announcing our mayoral candidates in big metros and other big municipalities way before time. So we don't wait for the day before elections to announce the mayors, which is something that was agreed. We noted substantial progress in the implementation of previous conference resolutions. The deploy is to continue with the implementation of outstanding resolution and provide regular feedback to appropriate structures of the ANC structure to strengthen capacity to monitor and evaluate ongoing work and performance of their deployees. I spoke about back to basic that really need to happen. Most areas are involved there already. There were areas. There were new areas that were raised at the commission, which were channeled for the next policy conference. So we noted those areas, but we didn't even discuss them because they were not for this representation of the youth in local government structure. In fact, in all three spheres of government, representation of the youth to be part of those structures, opportunities for the youth to be trainees in local government, creation of employment opportunity for young professionals at a local government administration, consider report on review of allocation of powers and function between local and district municipality. So those are the issues that were raised at the council, at the commission itself. Even the other, I think lastly we said the outstanding resolutions of whatever we need to give effect to the resolution on integrated planning and service delivery, and the NEC should continue reviewing the implementation of this strategy. Thanks, Chair.
Comrade Pichi, do you want to add anything?
Let me emphasize 5 points. The first is that, and this we reported to the plenary as well, that the ANC, if you like, is in the business of transforming lives, transforming the spatial arrangements in which people live in South Africa, which is still predominantly apartheid-style spatial arrangements, and creating effective institutions and transforming the existing ones that we've inherited. And clearly we're doing all of this to, as I said, change the living conditions of people and the business conditions as well, but also to win elections. And elections will happen sometime between May 16th and August 16th next year. We also recognize as the ANC that to win elections you need to win the confidence of people. And the way in which we intend to continue to win the confidence of people is to deliver upon people's needs and to jack up the machinery that we have and that we manage at a national sphere level, at a provincial sphere level, but particularly within the local sphere itself. The second point is to understand that when you write about local government, that we have a local government system that's very young. It's 15 years young in December this year. Secondly, it's a system that is evolving. So when the chair talks about looking at structures and types of municipalities, and I'll illustrate this for you in a moment, this is an evolving system. If you read you've got a professor here, so you can ask her. These institutions are not created in 1 year or 5 years or 10 years. They're created over many, many decades. And we are in the process of creating democratic institutions at a local level. So when we talk about the determination or demarcation of boundaries, both internal and external, this is part of the evolution of the system. So some of you might be aware that we have municipalities where there's 10 or 15,000 people living, 4 or 5 councillors that are looking after them. At some stage, the demarcation board thought, well, that's okay. As you look at the viability of these municipalities, you see that that's not tenable, that you can't survive, particularly if there's no revenue base or a minimal revenue base. And so we've made efforts, both as the demarcation board in its own right prior to 2013, but when this administration came into office as well. So where we have 278 municipalities today, we're likely to have close to 260 municipalities by the time we go to elections, if the current efforts to disrupt that process by certain political parties doesn't succeed. You can work out which political parties I'm talking about. Now, the chair also mentioned that part of this system evolution is to go back to the Constitution, and in particular the Structures Act, and ask, are the structures that we put into that act in the late 1990s or early 2000s still compatible with what is required today? So, for example, the Constitution says that we will have Category A municipalities. In the Act, we actually only have defined one type of Category A municipality, and that's a metropolitan municipality. What we recognize in places like Northern Cape, where you have large areas but small populations and distributed over big areas, and certain other parts of the country where, let's call it the more rural parts of our country, we need different types of Category A municipalities as well. So as part of reviewing the structures and the Structures Act, we intend to look at the local government model and come up with different systems. The third area under the local government system, which many talk about, as has been mentioned, is the financing model of local government. Now, we work on a historical premise that whereas national and provincial government generate their income from income tax and all of those taxes that are collected at a national level, local government is supposed to derive a lot of its revenue from property rates and from service charges that are collected. That happens to a large extent in many municipalities, but there are also municipalities where it doesn't happen because there isn't an economic base. So with the Treasury, COCTA and SALGA, there's a process at work now, which will take a bit of time, to look at the financing model of local government so that we can make it more sustainable over time. The third point is to emphasize what the chair said about evaluating the performance of ANC councillors prior to the ANC, what we call list process or candidate selection process, so that that determines who goes back to municipal councils and who doesn't, and how we work together in that regard. At the same time, we've got to constantly review the kind of conditions and the support that councillors receive. I think more and more we recognize that they're in the front line of the interaction with communities, that even if there's a problem that belongs to a national or provincial department, it's your local government councillor that is asked to account and explain. So they need more support than they probably currently have to get the right kind of interaction going with the public and to get the responsiveness that is actually required. One of the things that we need to do a lot better at, because of the kind of three-sphere governance system that we have, is in terms of promoting integrated planning and delivery. In other words, what happens within a municipality, whether it is housing or water or refuse collection, and they belong to the different spheres of government as responsibilities, needs to be carefully integrated both in the planning stage and in the delivery stage, and incorporated in the integrated development plans of municipalities, so that we know where a school is going, where a clinic is going, where a water main pipe is going, and so on, and the developments then take place in a much more coordinated way as well. As part of the review of the Intergovernmental Relations Act, we're also looking at how do we get greater capacity to intervene constructively and support constructively, both within the municipal sphere but also the provincial sphere as well. So we have Section 100 and Section 139 in the Constitution, but we don't have legislative provisions to guide those interventions. So that's work in progress currently in our area. The last point is the issue of service delivery and infrastructure, where clearly, for many of you, every protest is a service delivery protest. And it isn't actually, because there's all sorts of things that get mixed with the concept of 50 or 100 or more people protesting. But there's a lot of work that we've done already as a country, but there's a lot of work still to be done in investing in new infrastructure, but more particularly focusing on maintenance of infrastructure and making sure that municipalities set aside 7 to 8% of their budgets for the maintenance of infrastructure so that that infrastructure actually lasts longer. Now, all of this will be enhanced through the Back to Basics campaign, as the Chair has mentioned, which we saying that the conference is deciding will be not just a local government function, but it's an all of government campaign, where all spheres of government must contribute towards making sure that the basics at a municipal level are done in terms of interacting with communities and serving them better. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Comrade PG and Sis Indy. Members of the media, we have some time constraints. The ETC is outside and the plenary is waiting for us. The broadcasters have to go quickly to set up, and we have to go for the President closing address anytime soon. So I suggest if there are any questions that you think, if you can't ask it now and here, you may die tonight. If you don't ask that question, I will allow you if you may die, because I want to save you. Thank you very much. That brings an end. We'll allow ETC.
It made life too easy for us. Huh? Yeah. I was expecting some fun.
I'm sure they're tired as us.
Okay, you can walk them up.
I'll walk you up.
Okay.
So you look.
No, that.
What's that?
Politics is moving on, and
where is my bed?
And sometimes the credibility of an individual determines how people respond to an election. But also, you can hold that person accountable in that particular context as well. So it's something that the NEC is going to discuss and decide.
Matiba.
No, if you follow the documents on the so the other issue, I'm missing a flat in Island.
Okay. Matiba has reported the discussions in the commission. So for the resolutions of the council.
No, couldn't regular commission. Our bio reporter, discussions the commission by a discussion.
I don't know what's the name of the gentleman. Sir, you've been complaining about going to set up and so on. I suggest you talk to Keith and set up.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thanks very much.
I don't want you to complain. Now, ETC is here. Carol Patton is not here. Maverick is not here. Or Carol is here.
Maverick's busy.
Mzwandile is here. Mzabandu.
What do all these people want?
Bloomberg is not here. We can't start. Oh, you here? ETC. I'm not sure if I should ask Alex. Now we're talking about ETC. I know. Melon Kajan? Of course. Oh. I need a bouncer now to close the door.
The temp is probably coming.
We have a last commission, after which we shall proceed to the plenary for the open session. Welcome, the chair of the ETC, Comrade Enoch Kotongwana Matiba. Please just give us the resolutions of the council on the ETC.
Yeah, First and foremost, we've been telling you the same story. We want to repeat it. And that story is we acknowledge that we're meeting in an environment which is not necessarily favorable for on the economic front. I think we acknowledge that. And we kind of worked out as to what are the key things that are within our own competence that we could possibly do. Among other things is that our manufacturing sector has also had difficulties in terms of performance. And therefore, what is needed is to work out a strategy, of course, together with the industry. I must emphasize that. What is it that needs to be done to enhance our manufacturing performance and its competitiveness? But focusing on those sectors that are likely to the capacity to absorb and create more jobs. And what is going to be government's contribution in this regard? Our argument is that we need to review the entire incentive package, which is currently in place, and restructure it in such a manner that it can support that particular strategy. That's broadly what was said in relation to manufacturing. I'm not going to go. We also touch on the steel. There's no way we can ignore that. On the steel front, well, we support government's effort to assist the industry. We definitely do, and we also said then in line with that support cannot be unconditional. That support must be subject to commitments by both the steel industry, the labor movement, in relation to commitments to employment creation, further investment in this sector, which we think are critical issues. Some of the lack of competitiveness of that sector is not that only the cheap steel in China. There's also outdated equipment and investment. There's not been investment in equipment in the industry. So a quid pro quo is an investment that's likely to create jobs in the sector. And also appreciate the fact that, particularly as a result of drought and other things, the agricultural sector is also facing some challenges. Again, we said government must step in and assist with a package of support mechanism in that sector. A critical issue is youth unemployment. State SA has come up with a nice formulation called NEET, that is not in employment, education and training. So quite a group of people, of young people in that sector. We are saying let's focus in that group of people and bring them into focus training. Mobilize all the institutions that are available in government, in the private sector, and also make sure that there's relationship between this training and practical work. That's going to require a proper collaboration between government and business. I'm going to come back to this to this issue later. And again, that is also going to require a support incentive from government. So I've talked about these three productive sectors and the training. I'm sure the communication crowd has said something about broadband and that stuff. We also said something on the same question. I don't have to repeat that. On the mining front, I can't leave, that's my pet subject. I got to love of mining when the Youth League proposed nationalization. I was not necessarily have a better sense of it until that nationalization debate. Clearly, what has happened from next week, I think it's next week, there's an Operation Pakisa for the mining industry. And from our side, first and foremost, we're throwing our weight behind that initiative. And that's happening in an environment where we're facing commodity prices falling. And our attitude is that it's going to be important for the parties involved to discuss the sustainability and survival of the industry in the context of this global crisis. And a key aspect of it is policy certainty. And to give that, we have called on government and parliament as a matter of urgency to proceed with the MPRDA amendments to give policy clarity and certainty in this regard. That also talks to the oil and gas industry, because that also has got a similar challenges. If we don't resolve that, we're likely to die. In relation to what all you probably want me to talk about, energy and electricity, I'm not going to talk about nuclear though. I know that's what you're interested in, but I'm going to just tell you, key for us is increasing capacity. Is increasing. Okay, let me just say the issues we're talking about is efficient maintenance, increasing capacity, refurbishing of the old power stations. As you are aware, about a couple of these power stations with a capacity of about 10,000 megawatts are likely to be decommissioned unless we do something else. So our proposal is that it's going to be important that instead of decommissioning them, that we refurbish them. And that is going to probably not necessarily Eskom, but Eskom in partnership with the private sector to refurbish them. The second set of issues is the maintenance program, which we said is important. Thirdly, we've got to increase capacity, particularly base load. Because over time, if we don't do that, we're not going to grow the economy. The problem about not increasing this capacity is that people may say, the economy is growing, or it may not grow because a new investor, before I can set up a plant, I want to be assured that I can be connected to the grid. So we need new capacity to do that. So that's one set of issues. In relation, Comrade Tembe, I don't have the document. I may forget. This is what we need. So we probably have the document with you so that I shouldn't forget other issues. On the transport side, I don't want to go into detail other than that the issue of the e-toll was raised. Concerned particularly by the Gauteng people. And I think the first thing we want to do is an appreciation of the efforts which the Deputy President has done in trying to craft a compromise. The problem at the moment is that even that compromise has not yet been implemented, which is also creating a bit of agitation. And therefore, from our side, first and foremost, we're saying we're calling for a speedy implementation of that. Secondly, a speedy implementation. The Gauteng people have said, their study have shown that it has some so-called economic impact on a number of people, particularly on the certain sectors of our society. So government must look into that and look at possibly an alternative to deal with those questions. So if you look at all our measures, they're quite expensive to talk about. A consequential question would be, oh, you guys, how are you going to find all of this? all of this. And then what we're then saying is that part of the problem is that we've got a limited fiscal space. We've got limited fiscal space, and if we're with a limited fiscal space, what we need to do then is to pose the question, how are you going to fund this thing? The first issue we're raising. The first issue we're raising is reprioritizing the budget. Reprioritizing the budget away from consumption spending towards boosting investment and limiting waste and corruption. That's the first set of issues we're raising. The second set of issues we're raising is that it may well be that, there's a number of people who are calling for what is called the wealth tax for South Africa. Amongst them recently was Thomas Piketty, but interesting enough, the OECD has said the same thing. The OECD has said the same thing. Quite careful, journalists, I know you're going to make it first page, but before you make it first page, let me caution you, we're not saying we are going to implement a wealth tax. So that when you read this thing quite carefully, the wording is carefully worded. We are saying, because none of us in that room are tax experts. We're activists. So we activists define our aspirations, and then we let experts do the technical work. So that's why we've worded this thing quite careful. We've said consideration must be given to this aspect, and we need to explore its feasibility and practicability. And if possible, how do you do it? But we want to mobilize resources to achieve all of these objectives. Having said all of this, what we needed to talk about, also said a key activity we need from our side, what we called a developmental state, its central feature is the economic institution that is at the center of coordinating of this. In Japan, it was MITR. If you remember, the person who coined this formulation of what is called a capitalist developmental state. And let me take a risk, because I can see the professors inside. But let me take a risk and enter into the scholarly terrain and say, Charles Johnson, when he wrote MITI, looking at Japanese industrialization from 1925 to 1975, over a 50-year period, realized that a key aspect, one of the key things that is necessary, is a centralized coordination of economic management and policy making. And we're saying part of the problem, we should also be thinking in that direction, avoid a discord in government, making sure that that happens, a coordinated approach, preferably in the presidency. I think a similar thing needs to be happening in the ANC as well. The third set on these pillars is the financial aspect. A number of people, it's quite easy to say, let's have prescribed assets, do this and that. Our approach in this regard was, let's say, look, given the magnitude of the infrastructure spend that we're going through, it's going to be necessary that we have a pact with the financial sector. Therefore, part of this mobilization and social mobilization is to have an engagement with this financial sector on how do we work with them in funding the infrastructure on terms that are favorable for this kind of expenditure. All these measures are going to require, government alone cannot do all of these things. So what are we going to do? We surely need government, business, and labor to work with us in this regard. Obviously, the media can come and report about all those efforts we're doing. All right. So a key conclusion is that we'll need working together with these constituencies. But our approach is that this notion of a job summit, have a nice talk, is not the appropriate thing. Right? Let's have work together. The job summit may come, but it must be a culmination where we announce to all of you people what all our agreements that we've done in order to achieve the kind of perspectives and issues, these measures that we have listed above. Tim? I don't have the documents.
I know you've got time constraints, but I'm sure we can take one or two questions before we go up to the plenary. Just two questions, Prof, Carol, and last Emmy and just four, quickly.
Thank you very much. I'm Susan Boyson. I please want to hear about nuclear power. A, I want to hear why you don't want to discuss it here, and B, what was discussed, and specifically in relation to the recommendation in the discussion document that calls for greater transparency. So I please would like to hear what the recommendation of this astute meat gathering was. Thank you.
Carol?
You spoke about re-evaluating the entire suite of incentives. Is that everything in the manufacturing sector, everything the DTI has in the manufacturing sector?
Come on.
Incentives. Is that everything the DTI does in the manufacturing sector that the ANC wants to be revisited and looked at again? And then just on this issue of working with the private sector, you mentioned it a few times, and it's been one of the problems that the private sector often raise, that government doesn't understand what the private sector needs and so on. And then you get, on the other side, you get ANC saying, well, the private sector hasn't come to the party. So is this the issue you're trying to address? And how are you going to address it? How are you going to work better with the private sector?
Thanks, Carol.
Yeah, Carol covered some of my questions. Just one of my questions, please, is Mr. Gordon spoke about a more coordinated management. My understanding is that that is what Mr. Patel's ministry or department is meant to do. Could you just explain what would be done around that? I mean, will it be replaced? Will it be beefed up? Just what the thinking is around that, please.
Okay, my name is Trudy Makaya. If we had to summarize everything, all of this, in just one program and say, are you happy with progress on the NDP so far in terms of where you are? Secondly, are you happy with progress and discussions on the minimum wage and where that's going? And are you going to express any views on the level of that wage, or are you going to leave it as a technical discussion? And finally, what's the way forward on e-tolls? Because now it seems on e-tolls, because now there seems to be a bit of an impasse. How do we move forward?
Trudy is an analyst. She's an in-house analyst.
I mean, I was kind of prof. I was joking when I said I can't duck that issue. The difficulty is that people have got a tendency to think that it's a new issue. If you look at even the numbers, the capacity people talk about in relation to nuclear is a capacity agreed in the IRP 2010. In IRP 2010, we defined what was called the generation mix, and nuclear featured there as part of the four kind of areas for base load, and we referred in 2010 9,600 megawatts. That was intended to. What we are raising in our document is that we've got to do a cost-benefit analysis in the context of other pressing priorities. When we developed it, there were different conditions. So in the document that we wrote preceding the NGC, that was what we put forward. I don't think that has been contested. The transparency aspect and cost-benefit analysis is not being contested. In relation to incentive, we're talking about incentive package. I don't care which department provides it. All the incentive packages have got to be revised, including all the DTI ones and any other department that have got incentive packages come into the plate. and be reviewed. I think the private sector, we have been talking past each other a great deal. We're not, I mean, what we did in the run-up to the NGC, we consulted everybody, including journalists. So no one escaped our own consultation process. We had press briefing. We've got into across sectors of the economy, agribusiness, agri-SA, CIFSA, Chamber of Mines, I can count, Greenpeace. We kind of be doing a consultative process. So I think we are quite clear that for this thing to succeed, the measures we want to take into place. You know, let me just give you an example. I've got a relative in Snawan in Soweto who's done an N6 in electrical engineering, but he lacks the practical experience. It's not different from somebody who has got no metric, because there's no practical experience. So the key question is that if we make sure that all the government institutions provide this practical experience, but with an incentive for these institutions, government institutions, the private sector, an incentive for them to provide this thing. We want everybody, because of the magnitude of the challenge. That's the point we're putting about. I mean, the last time I checked, the 15 to 19 alone, people who are unemployed, not in education and training, are 750,000. That's the 15 and 19 alone. So the magnitude of the task requires a mobilization of all South Africans around this common objective. EDD is but one of the departments. That's precisely the fundamental problem. We are not saying is unequal among equals. So what you needed is to have got at the level of the president coordinating this work. We are not changing or replacing in economic development at all. Progress about NDP, not happy. But is it because, I said we have tried to implement the NDP under conditions not of our choosing, still borrow from Marx, under conditions not of our choosing, and therefore the environment has not been favorable, and then the outcomes are not the ones we would have preferred. The minimum wage, where we sit is that there's agreement by the network parties on a research which will give us alternative, and that research is a modeling, by the way, which that research will give you, if you pack it at this level, what has likely implication for employment. Right? If you pack it at this level, so it's a scientific approach. We do not want to make a pronouncement on a level which is a stamp sack. So our view is that we have got to wait for that outcome and be able to make we're not going to make an announcement. We have called, I've not mentioned that in this document, we're calling for we support that initiative because it's in line with, mind you, in the 2014 manifesto, we said we will look and investigate the possibility of a minimum wage. We ourselves said that. So we are supporting the initiative. The devil is going to be in the detail in relation to into the level. On it all, we are saying there's an agreement and a compromise stitched by the Deputy President of the country. What therefore is we were saying is that for starters, for God's sake, let's implement that. A majority of people read in newspapers that that's an agreement pegged at 255 rand or something like that. But when they go into this station, that facility is not available. So first and foremost, implement that. And secondly, pursue further investigation and work with the Gauteng government in order to achieve, to look at the other implications they're talking about. So that's a way forward in relation to the e-toll.
Thanks very much, Enoch. Ladies and gentlemen, that brings the end of all the commissions. Thanks very much for your patience, members of the media.
What was your problem?
We're going up now to the open session. I think, Keith, you will indicate when we are ready for that.
So, I wrote the document, so the stuff is in my
We're
head.
ready to go up?
Yeah. All right. I know I'm protected with Zizi. When I go with Zizi, not enough. No one puts me at all.
He made me run all this way to London.
Your cell phone.